So
Okay. What is it with people recording conversation? I mean, doing the interviews like 6 months in advance. I got booked to
oh
be on a show.
yeah, we
The yeah,
okay.
like like in January.
Yeah, hang on a second. I've started the stream, so let's go. Hey, everyone, welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran, and we're up and running on a lot of brand new gear today. So if the live stream is a little too quiet, or if it's a little not too noisy, let us know. We can make some tweaks while we're going here. But Rob, good morning. Welcome to the new Media Show.
Good morning, Todd. I feel all fresh and refreshed because we're new and improved. So it's pretty awesome. We're all digital now. I guess I'm passing through an Ethernet cable now instead of a SDI wire, right? Is that right?
Yeah. So your screen that is on the TriCaster, and not what's up there, that's still HDMI, but what's going to the TriCaster is an Ethernet cable. So amongst other things wired here. So we are slowly making the switch to purely digital here in the studio. And so I've got more desktop space because the switcher control surface is smaller, which is nice. But wherein lies my finger training keeps landing on the wrong button already. So we'll have to get my finger training done. But other than that, from the listener and viewer standpoint, it probably won't look much different than it already has, except for me trying to look around and making sure I'm on the right stuff. But I do have a few more things that we can show. So as an example, I've got the MacBook, which I'm watching the Facebook and the YouTube area. I can actually bring that up now, so we can actually bring people up they're chatting. And then number two, I can actually show them we're missing a channel, a recording of the show. Wow, isn't that interesting? Okay, so therein lies a problem.
Oh,
So it's okay. Oh, it's just started again. Oh, you're stereo. I'm not. Isn't that
oh,
interesting? Aha. Well, anyway,
that sounds like a setting. That sounds like a setting
yeah,
difference.
I think it's
Yeah.
I think it's a loose cable because it was working fine. I kept having a channel drop out, so it's making it to the TriCaster in stereo. But don't worry, we saved the show in mono anyway, so in the end, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't matter. It just takes up more file space to have stereo, so that's the only
That's right.
difference.
So the
Yeah.
master will be jacked today, but anyway,
But the
so
quality will be there, Todd. The quality is much better in
yeah,
stereo, you know.
yeah, and of course I went and basically didn't copy all the files off the old machine, so we have a new lower third today. So it
Ooh.
it doesn't.
Okay, Rob Green.
Yeah.
Oh,
So anyway, you were just before we got started or actually the YouTubers heard part of it, and so did the Facebookers. But you said you're getting booked for doing interviews for stuff that's released like 6 months from now.
no, not even released, recorded like 6 months from now. So people
Wow.
are recording some interviews and getting them in the can. If you know what I'm saying, they're pre-booking interviews, and then they've got so many in the can that they've done that they're booking them out 6 months.
Oh my
So,
God.
yeah, well, and plus the whole use of all the scheduling software programs now. They're all like Schedule.ly, I think is
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah, and how you go in as a guest and you select your recording time. So it's an interesting trend that I've seen as I've been doing more and more of these conversations with other shows all across the internet on all sorts of topics and subjects, and it just it's a whole other side of podcasting, honestly, that I didn't know that kind of existed, where these shows that do recordings of guests, and then pre-book way in the future, and then maybe at some point they release your episode. it's I think I've done like quite a few interviews. I don't know that they've even released the episode yet because they have so many backlogged.
Well, doesn't it cause a problem when you are essentially talking about something current and then it comes out 5 months later and you're saying, oh, get ready for Thanksgiving, and it's already like Valentine's Day or something? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's weird, but I guess that's the way some people
I don't know.
operate.
I think it's just it gives I guess them the flexibility to take time off if they want to, and I've seen that happen and impact when those episodes come out too. Is that they'll feel like, well, they've done all their work in advance, right? So they've got it all booked up, and they don't have to do them ongoing. But I see some of them doing ongoing interviews too. So they'll take a week off, or they'll take 2 weeks off, or something like that, and they'll come back and they'll do a bunch more of the interviews back to back and pile them up. So it's almost like a comfort, I think, somewhat is what they get into at that point. And sometimes they release it, and sometimes they don't. I've had a couple of them that I've done. They had to put like notes in the metadata talking about how things have changed since the recording happened.
Oh my God. There's one thing that, I don't do. And, if the person doesn't have the time to reach out to me personally and get on the phone for 5 minutes and figure out when we're going to record an interview, I don't use those for interviews. If you want to interview me, you need to email me and say, can I do a call? Can we, or can I put you on this?
That's a better way of doing it.
I don't like those schedule things. And then they want to send me a questionnaire, and I'm like, no, I don't do questionnaires. Read my bio, and I know I'm not going to pre-fill out questions and none of that. If you're the interviewer, you better have your stuff together so that when we get on, you're ready to rock and roll. You know who I am and a little background, and I'll provide a link to the bio and all that. But I'm too busy to have to do that stuff, and it's if you go to my thing and get scheduled. I'm like, here's my I do interviews only on Saturday at 11 a.m. 11 a.m. Pacific. And if you can't do it then, well, sorry. And I might on a weekday do a 10 a.m. Eastern, maybe if you really ask me nicely. But I just and then they get mad because you want to make them work around your schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Rob McCracken, hello. Hi, welcome to the show. And if you are on watching today, make sure you say hello in the chat room. We want to know who you are. So that's my shtick on that stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a little bit more flexible on the interview. I'll take them whenever. I mean, I'll take 10 minutes out of my day, or 15 minutes, or whatever, to 20 minutes, or whatever, to do a quick interview.
They're typically not 20 minutes. I'm 30 to 45 minutes on most interviews I'm doing. But
yeah, that's true. Some do go a little longer. Some are, relatively shorter. You're just a segment of what they're doing.
Right.
So it just depends. It's kind of all over the map. But I did notice on Pod to Pod, they have us listed. Our episode 188 is listed on Pod to Pod.
Oh, really?
But it doesn't really say what the topic of the show really. It just says podcast update. So I don't know if Matthew is featuring our episodes as part of his latest headlines role these days. But if he is, thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I did hear rumblings of this week that people are all excited about is that they were getting emails from Spotify that their shows had been approved, and they must have approved a a bevy of them. So, people that were waiting a year had gotten announcements. So I thought that was interesting.
Like I've been saying, those folks are a little more active right now. So I don't know what's up with them from the standpoint of the bigger picture of what they're doing, but they seem to be more active right now. So, and taking on shows and looking at them, and I think that there's been a link to I guess an online document of some sort that you can submit to Spotify through.
Yeah, there is.
I've seen it linked to in in Facebook and other places.
And people are getting
you can do that,
and people are getting approved off that document. So I was worried that it was just a placebo, that they had put that up there to,
well,
but it's not. People are actually getting approved. We did get confirmation on that this week too. So that is a viable way. And no longer are you a slave of your hosting provider to begin on Spotify. Now you can actually go and apply yourself.
I think they do actually prefer that method though.
But you guys have to do your own filtering before you send it over. You can't send everything.
Yeah, and that causes all sorts of issues.
See, okay. See, therein lies. Oh, I'll get you on Spotify. Well, okay. Yeah. That was my big hiccup with them, is they wouldn't let us submit everyone. They wanted us to cherry pick shows, and I was like, "Who am I to cherry pick shows?"
Yeah, they don't really say anything about what they're looking for either. So, which isn't exactly entirely helpful.
No.
So,
but if they're approving stuff off this list, then that's good. And
I guess I would rather have it this way, where they're not telling me, well, I only want comedy shows or sports shows or something like that. But it does make it more complicated, and you have to be careful about setting hopes and expectations that it's going to happen, because most publishers are excited to be over there. I would say that's been my experience. I think that the big shows that are doing dynamic ad insertion are not so excited when they hear the details, though.
Oh yeah, when you read the agreement, maybe you ought to really consider whether you want to be over there or not. Yeah. So
it depends on where you are in the space. I know we talked a lot about this last week too.
Yeah, but it's to me, I'm just like, okay, so how many listens do you get for giving up all that? Giving up all that intellectual property and branding and all that stuff. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Is it? I know those guys are aggregating a lot of listeners to music. I think it's still a little bit unknown if that's going to translate into a lot of podcast listening.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where that's happening anyways, happening on iOS, Android, or where that listening is coming from. So, I think over the next few months, we're going to hopefully learn a little more about this. I'm hoping. So.
Well, only time will tell on this, Rob. So,
It will. Time and numbers of shows.
Yeah.
So. Well, hopefully it'll grow.
I think my wiggling a cable has helped. I'm back to being able to have both channels being recorded at once, but that recording's jacked no matter what. I have to just take the mono channel. But yeah, so just to give you a little more insight into what's going on here with this studio upgrade is, I don't know, did I talk about the deal I got? So what happened?
Oh, did you get a whole new box? I mean, it's not just a software upgrade.
Yeah, it's a whole new box. So they, NewTek has always had this incredible upgrade trade-in thing. Yeah. And you send your old box and you get $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 off a new box. And when these things cost $20,000, that is a huge deal, right? To get that kind of savings. So I had not planned on upgrading. The box I had before was 7 years old, and I'm still Well, I've amortized it all out from the IRS, but internally, in Todd's internal amortization, the number of years I wanted to run it had not run out yet, right?
The depreciation, right?
Yeah, Todd's depreciation had not run out, but I'd had a few issues with it where it spontaneously rebooted a few times, and so the option was to pack it up and spend $400 to have it shipped to NewTek and have it worked over, and they're good on fixing things that have issues, and $400 to ship it back because it's a 4U heavy, like 80-pound box, and so I've been weighing this for a while, and and I hadn't even thought about upgrading. Then I heard this deal where they gave you $5,000 off a new box, and you kept the old box. And I was like, what? well, I can keep the old box? And they said, yeah. Well, my model wasn't included in the deal. So my dealer, who I've dealt with for years, he went to NewTek and said, hey, this guy's, lifetime, he's been using TriCasters for a long time. He's got two right now. He's got a Mini and an 860. Let's do a little customer appreciation. So they extended the trade-in, or not even trade-in, the trade-up deal to my model, and I just couldn't. I couldn't resist. So it still was a $15K bill to make this jump. But I'm off hardware. I'm on brand new hardware. I'm not on hardware that's 7 years old, and I couldn't believe the 860 was 7 years old. That blew me away more than anything. So. And it's much smaller and hopefully uses less power and more gooder. We'll see if that ends up being the case. But so my son is spazzing because we're going to take the other box and we're going to stick it out in the garage and build a little green screen studio out there.
Mm-hmm.
And what's cool about it is that machine had already been updated to this NDI technology. So he could really be shooting something out here and I could be capturing it up here on this machine. So and I don't even tap a tenth, or maybe a third of this thing's total power. What I really need to do is go to San Antonio and go to their 1 week school and learn how to use all the other functions that this thing has that I very rarely ever even touch. So, but anyway, it's I've been preparing for this upgrade for a couple of weeks, and it was actually relatively easy.
Don't you also have a TriCaster Mini too?
I do, but that only goes to shows and events and little.
Oh, yeah, that's your portable.
Yeah, unit, the portable unit, and it gets way underutilized. Gets used a couple of weeks out of the year, but it goes in a Pelican case, and this one here requires a special shipping box, and so yeah, I can just roll the Pelican case to an event on and with two boxes, I can be up and running and doing a multi-camera shoot. So, and even on that model now, because they've changed, because I updated it to this NDI stuff as well, I'm going to ultimately replace two cameras here with point tilt zoom cameras that are both NDI, and will essentially be SDI free in the studio early next year. So,
wow.
So it's kind of cool. If and today is going to be interesting when we get done, because like what I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking at I get your shot up now. I'm going to be looking at your speaking compared to the audio and see how far see if the sync is off, see if we're off more than a couple of frames. So that'll be the true test today.
Yeah. I think I've seen that a little bit. It's been a little bit slower, and that was one question or concern that I had about being on IP, if there was going to be more latency.
Yeah, they say 2 frames, and I've already the video chain here. I already moved the audio 3 frames to the right, so the audio. Let's see, is that right? The audio lags the video. I think that's the right way to say that, because I have to move the audio to the right 3 frames, or 3. What is it's not 3 frames, but like 3 microseconds or whatever it is. But that's enough usually to get it, synced up. That's a challenge when you've got this analog pipe, and then you got a separate video pipe, and then they join up together. There's really no way to make it perfect. The way it would be perfect is if the mic was going right into the camera, and so yeah.
So you're passing audio and video through the same cable.
Well, audio still goes analog to the box.
Oh, it does. Okay,
Yeah,
it's a separate output then.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if it turns out to be too bad, what I'll end up doing is your audio can be fed separately to the TriCaster on that line, and if it's too bad, you and I will still be in the setup we are, but what will go to the TriCaster will actually be the audio that's on the digital line that's going to the box. So today's kind of this experiment to see, where shit lines up. Excuse my French, but so it's it's one of those things. And it's when you're doing video and you're doing multi cameras and you have all this other kind of cool stuff hooked up. There is a little bit of a production. I do more production on the video than I ever do on the audio, which is kind of funny. So hey, Chuck.
So Todd, I saw
Amy?
that you made a post on Facebook this past week talking about making sure that you're not over-reporting your numbers. What was that all about? Did something happen that kind of, you don't have to tell us details, but just did something happen that triggered that concern?
My phone all week triggered that concern. Somewhere somebody must have had been at a party together or at a conference or something was mentioned. I asked about the third caller I had this week, where is this originating? And they wouldn't say, which made me go, And it was four media buyers and 3 direct buyers. And they all wanted to basically contract, and we provide this for media buyers that want it. They wanted their own stats redirects to give to folks on their podcasting teams, and which was kind of interesting. I actually got some numbers. I know now what certain how many there are. Some podcast advertisers that are, your color was changing. I was looking back there. There was upwards of 130, 140 podcasters were on a single ad deal with the vendor that had the most shows on an ad buy. That blew me away. I was like, you got how many? And she said, I'll be reaching like 130 and 140. And she says, and first of all, they all thought they could just log on to Blueberry and look at stats. And I'm like, no, we don't do that. You can't come on the system. And I say, if you get written permission from the podcaster and they give you a login, yes, you can get in and look, but there's, you're going to have to log into individual accounts and you're going to have to get permission from we don't give you that information. So essentially what's they've got, and I'm, it's what it boils down to is they've had some problems, and they wouldn't say. And so what I've been doing is I've been going back and I've been figuring out, all right, where are all these folks advertising at? Where are they all? We're all 7 of these. Where are they at? Who are they advertising on? What platforms and so forth. And I have a suspicion where the problem lies. But so I'm doing proposals for them to have their own stats accounts, and and I've already in the past I have done accounting. We've had to do accounting on campaigns for. That's it's always something I don't like doing because it's contentious with not only the host, but usually the host is hosting provider.
So when you say that's basically an audit on the campaign, is that what you're saying?
I have done some audits on campaigns. These are not these discussions were more about we want our own stats. Now, just like they do
separate.
separate.
Yeah.
If we want to be able to log in and look at what this show is doing.
So how is that typically done?
Well, basically I give them a rolling stock of keywords, and then they and I put them in the system. So I'll put, let's say, for example, let's say it's Tony's Pizza that comes to me and wants to run their own stats. So I'll give them like a PIZ _1 through 500, and then they can issue those as needed, and we provision them in the system so that when they log in, they'll have to keep track of their, who it goes to what on their own spreadsheet, but they can readily turn a show on, and they basically have to implement a redirect just like anyone else does. So I cautioned them. I said, our redirects doesn't work on Podbean and a few others, a few other sites that, and I said, and you also, like, for example, on SoundCloud, we can measure the RSS stuff, but we can't measure the web player plays, so there's some places where our stats won't go, and it's just a limitation of their platform. So, I don't mind their business. We talked about the privacy concerns and, basically how we restrict access to stats in the company. I told them who actually had access. And believe me, so the last thing I want to do is, everyone would think that it would be really cool to go through and look at a whole bunch of shows' stats. I'm going to be honest with you. About after the third one, you're kind of like, kill me now. I don't need to look at this shows. It's no fun to go and snoop. Because it all runs together. But we do have internal policy at the team to who has access to stats. And because, I've always been concerned about, and I'm not, my employees won't talk, but at the same time, we just limit access to prevent any possible compromises. So,
so is the solution to this problem giving direct access to reporting systems to advertisers?
Yep, that's the solution.
Yep,
that's the solution.
Versus, I think what's oftentimes done is that a report will be issued or a spreadsheet or something like that, right? And then sent to the advertiser.
Yeah.
And it's easy for that to be, a number or two to be changed.
Yeah. A spreadsheet's easy to be changed. Yep. If you are, if you log in, there's no way to manipulate that. And then the only thing then you have to question is the trust of the actual system that the data is coming from. Then you have to ask, the question has to be asked, but, Rob, while you're, if you're still watching on the show today, Midroll could come over and contract us, and they could give out sub accounts to advertisers. They could contract us, and we build your own. We'll build you something. So
do you guys support creating
white labels?
Basics, separate user accounts that will give direct access just to stats?
If they're on Raw Voice, not if they're on Blueberry. It's a limitation on Blueberry system. So if they're on our and the Raw Voice stats was set up to serve that, and that's why it's a higher price point.
Yeah.
So.
I could see an advantage to that.
Yeah,
it keeps everybody honest.
Yeah. And it's also harder to manipulate a screenshot. So if you, maybe not, but if you screenshot a page, and send it over, that's okay too. But as we've also have a service where we certify stats. So we've got probably 20 or 30 podcasters each month that I send out a certification notification to who they're doing ad deals with. And it basically says I'm certifying, and we're not doing the ad deal with them, so we're truly a third party. Now, if it's my own ad deal, I can't certify my own stats. That's kind of, that would be kind of like the fox guarding the chicken coop, right? So, so for folks that are running their own independent campaigns, and I have nothing to do with it, for me to be able to do a certification on someone's stats to me, it's easy. I push a button and I get a PDF and I send it to who they want me to send it to. So, but I don't know if there's been some fraud, if there is just some concerns on counting, if they've had some campaigns that weren't, no one would get into very many specifics, but it was all last week. And it started on like Tuesday. I got an email and asked, can we talk? And it was like almost immediate. They wanted me to call them back immediately. And, so that just started a tsunami of and then I had my last meeting yesterday at 10:30 Pacific, and what I'm finding too, Rob, is that the media buyers that I'm talking to are the folks that were the media buyers were dialed in. It was the independent. It was the guys that were doing in shop, basically doing their ads in house. They're the ones I had to spend the most time with. Because the media buyers had seen our stats already to a person. They had seen Blueberry stats in reporting from various groups and also various podcasters. So for them, it was easy. It was the actual businesses that had the biggest. I had to spend the most time with.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'd love to know where they all were having lunch together. And strange things. It wasn't like San Francisco. It was both East and West Coast. So there must have been some conference or something people are at.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with anything going on this week.
Yeah, me neither.
So.
And they wouldn't tell me. I asked specifically. You've been talking to other folks, because it was you don't get 7 calls in a week. Unless someone has had a chit chat. So, we've had before, I've put those kinds of posts out before. Last one was maybe 18 months or so ago, where we had one company that we came in and did an audit on a campaign, and a podcaster had to send a 6-figure check back to them.
Wow.
And that was
right.
That was over a 1-year period.
Wow.
Yeah, reporting over a year. So if you don't have the check, then you got to do make goods for a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a little lesson to be learned from that. Yeah.
Yeah. That podcaster doesn't like me very much.
Well, you did it to yourself. I would imagine.
Again, it puts you in a very uncomfortable position. Where you're like, you're going to have to send me your log files. What? What do you mean?
Yeah.
I said, I need your log files from your media delivery. And you get this runaround like, well, we don't have them. I'm like, every server that serves media has the log files, and there's a company in the podcasting space that doesn't archive them. So.
Yeah, you start getting into that. I guess the ad buyers these days are not chumps anymore. They're not chumps. They're getting serious, aren't they?
Well, they're getting serious. Yeah. And
with some real dollars being spent.
Yeah, real dollars. And when a person tells me I'm doing 130 shows, I'm like, whoa. Let me add you to my list to call you back in a couple of weeks and be on the other side. Hey, I got podcasters. Yeah. So it's insane. It's insane. But so just for the podcasters listening, never ever pump your numbers. And I've had this saying that I've said since 2005, and this is the mantra I gave Angelo in the beginning when we built the stat system. I said, I don't care what the number is, as long as I know what the number is. I don't care if it's 1,000. I don't care if it's 1. I don't care if it's 100,000. Chuck Tomasi was on here. Chuck was wrote some.
But that number needs to be based on some logic and reasoning in the algorithm.
Right.
Right.
I think in the early days, and Chuck, if you're still on the stream, I remember when we did some of our first tech podcast stuff, someone wrote a script to parse a feed, and that may have been Chuck that actually wrote that script. And we weren't doing any filtering in the very early days. We were just doing raw, it was just pulling out the raw information. And
that was before there was any data.
Yeah,
to do any filtering.
There was no data, and we processed, and Rob, we used that for about a year.
I had my own servers. I had my own servers co-located, and there were no algorithms running against my metrics either back then.
Yeah, so we used that for about a year, and then there was there was this massive sticker shock when we went through and the initial. You talk about sticker shock because you think about the amount of bogus traffic that's out there. 2/3 of the traffic hitting your download is junk. 2/3 of the stuff
it's bots
and scrapers
bots and head requests and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Right. So 2/3 of it is just immediately vaporized. It goes into the ether. And that's before then you start looking at duplicates and you start you go and sorting out even you do the next round of scrubbing. And so for us, we've in that first year, 2004 to 2005 time frame, we were reporting everything. And but the thing was, the advertisers were ecstatic because we were still blowing it out performance wise. And
well, nobody knew any better on either side.
No
of the fence.
Clue.
Yeah, I mean, I think how it was treated back then was how we were analyzing web pages.
Yeah.
Which was unfortunately based on hits. A lot of people were still using that term hits.
Yeah.
That's if I hear that term in reference to stats these days, I go, somebody's living in the 90s, man.
Yeah.
So you don't even want to say that word in the context of website metrics now. Hits.
Yeah, Rob,
it just proves that you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm still getting some rattle from you a little bit on your mic from time to time. It's just a little. Does it sound like overmodulated on your side or at all?
Well, it could be because I sometimes raise my voice, and it probably I don't have a compressor running on my mic.
Yeah.
So that would probably cause that. As long as I don't get right there, right. If I get a little hot, it spikes. So here, let me turn it down a little bit. So I just need to keep a constant volume level. I shouldn't get all excited, Todd. So Todd, I was also looking around and noticed that there's been a new smart speaker that's been released from Harman Kardon.
Okay.
It's called the Invoke, and it's based on the Cortana agent. So it's getting pretty good reviews of people that bought this thing.
So it's Microsoft's first smart device.
Smart speaker, yeah.
Smart speaker. So let's see if I can Google this. What's the name of it again? It's called the what?
It's a Harman Kardon. It's not actually made by Microsoft. It's Harman Kardon.
Yeah.
Kardon. Right. Actually, it's it's spelled INVOKE. The Invoke.
Okay. Invoke.
With Cortana. And it's a pretty sharp looking unit.
Of course, it comes with
the Harman Kardon folks are into style and design.
Oh, here it is. Here it is on Best Buy.
It's $199.
Yep.
Comes in two colors, graphite and pearl silver. It's also available off the Microsoft Store too. But it looks like it works with Spotify, and I don't know what other apps it supports yet. If they have a good selection of skills, or I'm not even sure what they're calling the apps that run on the server side with this.
Yeah.
But it's I'm sure it's built on the same model as what, Apple and Google and now Microsoft, and actually all these services use the same voice agent, so they all sound pretty much the same.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same woman that actually has voiced all of these commands. And she's the one that tells all of the kind of sorry jokes. So if you ask them to tell you a joke, they're kind of like, maybe 1 out of 10. You kind of have a little chuckle.
Yeah. Well,
it's interesting.
For those of you that are listening, I apologize about the audio today. We'll figure out what's going on there. It almost sounds a little scratchy, but yeah, they're always known for their, I don't know.
You're a little over modulated too. I think I am as well.
So maybe
your
it's
new system is just maybe set a little hot.
Yeah, maybe I'm pushing too hot. Back to you. All right, and it's something in there. I'll get it figured out. Can't have scratchy, not on a podcast.
Yeah, that never happens.
No, not at all. All right, well, so this is, who uses Cortana?
It's built into every Windows machine.
I know.
I use it every day on my Windows phone. But you're right, Todd. It's an also ran device. It's come on the market kind of late, right? Kind of like the typical pattern that we see for Microsoft.
Yeah.
They're oftentimes not leaders. They're late followers, and that's in a technology market like this. That's not a great place to be.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the success of what Amazon's done with with the Echo. And even Google is kind of sitting in the back seat, actually. So it's, Apple, I know, is about to, or have they announced their smart speaker, Todd? I can't.
Well, they did, but I don't know if it's. I don't know if they did, but I don't know if it's available yet.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah, I don't know when it comes on sale, but they did announce it. I'm pretty sure that they're going to have it. So it's going to give me another overpriced piece of Apple gear.
Of course. But I'm sure it'll be cool. It'll be compatible probably with the podcast app. I would expect that.
Yeah.
So this smart speaker technology stuff has definitely gotten the big technology companies' attention, and I know Spreaker has built a platform skill that gives access to the 50,000 shows that we have, and it's active in the Amazon system right now. So I think that it's still maybe a little bit tough to use. I have one sitting on my desk right here, so it's not as easy to use yet as I would hope. I would hope it would become a little more natural language. I think it's getting there, but I think we got a couple of years before we really get there.
Yeah. Someone asked me in Facebook, is Blueberry Stats IAB compliant? Yeah.
Well, I would say, Todd, that you're probably more compliant than the IAB standards, right?
Yes, we are. We go well beyond the IAB standard. Oh,
Speaking of IAB, what's the latest that you can share with us?
I think it's in its final go around. I think we went through the document. I read it about 10 times, and I think us and both PodTrack asked for one sentence to be added, and I think we're pretty close.
What are you close to? Are you close to
to this next document? Next document coming out.
Okay. So is the purpose here to slowly roll this out into some sort of recommendation? Is that what that gets deeper and deeper into the weeds, as they say?
Well, that's the goal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Is it succeeding?
To your satisfaction? Angelo's not pissed off, so I guess that
a pretty low bar.
Well, no. He's he's quite sensitive to this, so I think we're generally happy with where we're at with the document. With you get 30 people in any room and try to get them all to agree to everything. It's impossible. So, um, that that really is the crux of it. And again, they are guidelines, and we hope at some point there will be an affordable way for companies to get certified. It is not, the MRC has already said that they are not going to certify anyone's podcast stats from log data. The only way they will ever certify any podcast stats is from client side. Well, the problem is that's never going to happen. It just isn't. It's not going to happen, and it's
Well, I suppose it could happen, Todd, but the likelihood that you're going to be able to scoop up all the metrics from all of the client level that's a big undertaking.
You have to
I
get.
don't know that it's possible.
You have to get every app developer to do client side reporting back to a central source. Every app, including
every
Apple.
Player, yeah, exactly.
And they have to. It all has to go back, and you have to be able to collect that. And because there's so many players, how do you support that client side? Data. You can't. It's. And then
server-side data is where it all resides.
Server-side data is where it all resides. So the IAB Tech Group, is looking at this. And again, it's not going to be cheap. An MRC certification is $150,000 a year. That's not a cheap bill. So companies are going to have to decide. And let's say the IAB does it, and their tech lab does it. Okay, so what's a tech lab going to charge? That's not going to be cheap either. Let's say it's $75,000. One could hope it would be that.
Do we really need to be endorsed by the MRC?
Well, it's not going to happen. Too late.
No, I know. Yeah, I mean, ever.
Well, if the MRC, I was ponied up to the bar with a check in hand to do an MRC certification before they changed their mind on. It's pouring here, so if you're hearing rain, I get a little feedback when it's raining. Now that they've said that they're going to only certify client side, then
takes
it off the table. So if the IAB, and again, the Tech Lab's looking, this is not the IAB's primary mission, is to do certifications of people's systems.
Yeah.
That's
actually verifying that the standard that's been established, or the recommendations that have been established,
are actually being followed,
are actually being deployed,
right,
in a given platform, right?
Yep. So you look at your advertising revenue. So if you're doing $1 million, let's just use a number, $1 million for advertising revenue. And on most of our advertising deals, we work 70-30. So that's $300,000 that comes into the company as our commission for $1 million worth of ad deal. Okay, so now take out of that employee, and employees that manage that, take out their salary, and take out, any other ancillary expenses. And let's say you're left with $200,000. All right. So let's say you're left with $200,000 and $1 million worth of sales. Are you going to spend $75,000 to $100,000 a year to certify that data? Now, if you're doing $20 million a year in advertising, then that $75,000 or $100,000 is a drop in the bucket. It's an expense line.
Yeah.
But, you have to weigh, again, and we don't know what it's going to cost if the IAB decides to do it, to be honest with you. So, it could be $150,000 like the MRC.
But Todd, I could see over a period of time, though, this is going to take many years, though, that this could be deployed client side. It's going to take an effort.
Well, Nielsen hopes so.
A whole nother. It's going to take a whole nother kind of sales and marketing campaign to get people converted over to this and deploying new players. And I don't know, it's kind of like trying to get a new platform going and having to pay or to try and get people to build apps for your new platform. I mean, it's really kind of the same space of this. How do you get people to organically do it? There has to be a motivation.
Yeah.
Why would a player maker or a platform or Apple or whatever do this? There needs to be some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Not just that
that we want it.
It just needs to be done. Yeah. It's that's probably not good enough.
And it's going to be
what's the motivation?
It's going to be resource heavy. Because every time someone clicks play, there's going to be a call made to a client side, auditing system. And then when they hit stop, that signal is going to be, so you're going to be using users' bandwidth and everything to do these signaling. People with privacy concerns are going to get.
So who would this be reported back to?
Well, that's the question.
The MRC?
Well, I'm sure if Nielsen had their way, they'd do it. But
there needs to be like an independent database that has a bunch of API hooks in it, right?
The problem is I need it to certify my system. I don't want Nielsen to have it.
Oh, well, yeah.
Exactly.
Can more than one party have this MRC?
Oh, what do you mean MRC? You mean?
Well, this whole certification.
Oh yeah, every company they would have to pay for it separately. Absolutely.
Pay for it separately. Okay.
Yeah, because PodTrack, Libsyn, Raw Voice, we'd all have to write checks every year, not just once, every year, and then periodic audits.
But this client-side reporting thing that could happen at separate platforms, right?
Well,
you could have a client or a reporting thing, or is it one central database that everybody reports into?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I'm not the tech. I would assume this is going to be very painful. That's why I don't see it happening anytime soon. Is
this? I think the big question is this going to be required for on demand to reach $1 billion in ad sales?
Yeah. Well, if it is, then we're a long ways away from hitting $1 billion. Because here's the insanity of this, Rob. The true insanity of this whole thing is that the server side data is incredible. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But
there's nothing wrong with it.
It's and I think once Apple gives us their new stats with that's going to be another thing too. Be careful what you wish for. That's going to be an eye opener. Boy, we're going to be talking about that for 3 months. As soon as
that's likely going to be coming out close to the end of the year. I'm assuming, or just.
My prediction is between as soon as Thanksgiving's over, between that and December 15th. That's my prediction. That's what they indicated anyway. So right around Christmas, we'll get a Christmas present from Apple. But, that's only going to give us 50% of, at least for my show. My show's about 50% iOS app. So it's going to give you a look at what 50% of the audience is doing. One thing to think about too is, where does Android fall on this? As a matter of fact, there's a discussion going on right now on a Facebook channel that I shake my head, and Cody Boyce posted in the Facebook or in the podcast community on Facebook. He said, shocked by how many non-iPhone users are listening to our client shows in web browsers. But how many Android users don't know there are podcast apps other than Apple Podcasts and think they can't listen to podcasts? Google really needs to get their act together. As this has been said multiple times, let's hit that inflection point. And my response, you know what my response was? This is why we put subscribeonandroid.com online a number of years ago. If you don't have a widget on your website, you should. It helps new Android podcast listeners find one of 14 supported one-click subscribe on Android podcast apps. Sadly, Rob, most podcast hosting companies ignored it, but we gave it away to the community for free to use.
Yes.
So
Agreed, Todd.
okay. So anyway, and people are like, one guy said, I'm just going to tell them to use Podcast Addict. And I'm like, okay, is that you're going to limit them to using Podcast Addict? Isn't that as bad as limiting them to,
Yeah.
people don't get it. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, we've talked about it on the show before. There's some efforts there on the part of that big
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 Google,
company,
big Google in the
Google.
sky.
big Google in the sky to do some right things by the podcasting space, but it's still yet to be seen exactly what that might be.
Yes,
So.
indeed. So time will tell. But here
Yes, it will.
everyone's like, having
Or
this
not.
having this big discussion about subscribing, getting users to subscribe on Android. And I'm like, podcasters, please see the bigger picture here. Come on, wake up. It's not this complicated. It really isn't.
Yeah, and I keep hearing, seeing this comment in that podcast community group too, and it's what is the best podcast hosting service?
Oh my God, that's like every 3 days.
Constantly asking the question. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
the bigger theme, and I guess maybe we could talk about it on this show, is I had one of those, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink discussions. Had a podcaster that was, I listened to a show, really good show. And he's complaining he's not getting any subscribers. So I said to him, okay, well, this is how it started. I said, send me a link to your show. And he sends me this weird link to some network. And I'm like, no. Send me the link to your show. And he said, well, that's where my show is. So I went to the network, and it was some network I've never heard of before. And he was buried on like sublayer 10 on their website. And then I, where he was hosting, that's, hosting agnostic. I'm not worried about the hosting. I'm just looking at his site. And I replied back to him. I said, when you're doing your show, do you have a .com that you have forwarding to that page? Well, no. I don't know how to do any of that. Have you ever thought about setting up your own web page so that you have a point of presence, a brand? Well, no. I why would I do that? I'm just, so the conversation went from there. But this podcaster didn't understand my point of view in that, okay, you've got this great show. Your show's buried out there in Netherland. Your show notes are thin. How do you expect to continue to grow your show if you're just hoping people are going to find it? And you're not helping them find your show. So it's just some fundamental stuff that a lot of podcasters are not doing. And it I don't know. I've been doing this so long, I get a little bit cynical, and I don't want to come across as that grumpy curmudgeon, but boy, I just want to take some, I want to shake them,
It kind of boils up after a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, you just want to shake them, like don't complain about not having enough listeners. Don't complain.
Yeah.
I said, you're the product here. Your podcast isn't the product.
Yeah.
Oh. And if that's just, if you just want to do a show, great. Go over to SoundCloud, host over there, and have your page. If you just want to have a show and do a show,
Yeah.
but don't ever come back and complain about your listener count ever.
So, yeah, I saw a post on Facebook that Chris Smith made here recently about making money with your podcast, and he wrote that Chris is, you used to work at Podcast One and has been involved in the podcasting space for a long time, and he wrote, "What would you do for $26,000 a month? And would you do 4 hours of a podcast a month? I think I would."
Oh, what's that?
And he also said,
reference to?
I think most people would. Podcasting has grown exponentially in the last couple of years. Are recognized as a viable medium and validated as a business model with gobs of cash. This is what Chris wrote.
Huh.
There are opportunities that content creators in audio world never dreamed of. Do you think he writes here? Do you think the third coasters in 2005 were listening to Tony Khan talk about this new thing? No, I don't quite get the big picture on that one necessarily, but so anyway, he's talking about what's the secrets to doing a podcast these days and getting in the top 200 list in iTunes. And I guess it's not uncommon that show hosts in the top 200 are making $26,000 a month doing their podcast based on getting large numbers of listeners and getting involved in advertising. He says he's going to tell a secret here, but they're not really secrets, he says, but I'll share them right now. Tell a story that moves an emotion. Number 2, release your episodes on a schedule that is consistent. Always leave them wanting more. Promote. Number 5 is get better. Number 6 is get better. Rinse and repeat. That's his magic formula for making big bucks in the podcasting space.
Well, I've got about 8 more items to add to that list, but
yeah,
because that's what I had to do.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I don't disagree with anything he said there. I
No,
think it's certainly it's certainly true that telling a story and driving emotion, I think is the key to any audio program. I think you have to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think we maybe drive some emotion on the show sometimes, Todd. I think to some degree, and I think that's probably why we've at least reached some level of scale with this show.
Yeah, there's about 5,000 of you that listen. No one sends us any email though.
It's because they're all lurking.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are in this podcasting space now that are not podcasters too.
Yeah.
So that's another big thing that's changed over the last 5 or 6 years is that there's just a lot more people that they don't even have microphones. A lot of people that work in this space. I've that's been something that I've noticed, but I think Chris needs to expand a little bit more on his post here because his number 4 is promote. I think that needs to be expanded on a little bit.
Yeah, that goes.
How do we promote? Yeah, I mean, how do we promote to grow this medium to larger audiences? I mean, if you're going to hit $26,000 a month in income, you got to be at least pulling in 250,000 listeners every episode, at least.
Well,
right?
I take my own show as an example, and I do very well with my show, and I'll be, I've publicly talked a little bit about that in the past, but, it's truly about that branching beyond just doing the show. CES. I'm going to spend $25,000 to go to CES. All right, now people think about that for a second. $25,000. My total cost end to end will be $25,000 to do CES and all the production and everything.
Well, I thought it used to be more than that, Todd.
It did, but I've been able to get the cost down. That is the gift from me, from my tech show. That is a gift that keeps on giving for years and years and years. Every year, the what I generate out of that show. But again,
Yeah.
it's a single show, but it's for my niche. It's for my tech show, right? And and I've tried to share that philosophy a couple of different ways over the past few years. We've talked about it on this show a lot, and there's you just got to find a way. The podcast is the linchpin, but everything else feeds the beast. Everything you do has to feed the beast back to the show, And there's a lot of gurus out there, and and some of them will have all these formulas for success and all this stuff. It really boils down to, like Chris said, cranking the shows out, be consistent, make them entertaining, make them compelling, and then do all the extra stuff externally to feed I took, when I was in the Navy and still doing I started my podcast. I was from 2014 to 2017, I was full-time active duty. And I used every vacation day to go to events, to do anything I could to build. We had no family vacations for 3 years. I used all my vacation time to do this extra stuff to build the show. And that was a sacrifice I was willing to make, because the end goal for me was that when I retired January 1st of 2017 was to have the show sustainable so that I could do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, wherever I wanted. And but it was huge sacrifice. So.
Well, plus, Todd, you've been involved in creating video and blogging and audio podcasting. So you've done
But I've done radio.
trifecta.
I've done TV. I did a book. So I hate to say but without that stuff, without doing BBC at 3:00 in the morning every week for months and months and months, without doing local television once a week, without doing all this other stuff to feed the beast, the show would have
drive audience to your core.
And still, even today, I still have to drive, because people don't listen forever. Everyone, you get 10% of your audience that listens forever, but most people will get sick of you and me about a year or two in, and they'll go find something else, and then they'll come back in a couple of years. This is it blows me away now, but you have to podcast long enough to know this. People go away, and then they come, hey, we haven't listened for a couple of years, but I'm back. Well, welcome back.
Yeah.
Well, and I know why you were gone. You got sick of me, and you went and go somewhere else and listen to someone else. So you have
They may come back, or they may not.
They may not. So you have to continue to feed, new ear. I love this term. New eyeballs into the show. You have to drive every month. You got to keep, priming the pump, pouring a little more water in it so that you can make sure that the pump keeps working. So,
well, you're driving people to their eyes.
Ears.
And their ears.
And they come to the site to read. Some read, some listen, some watch. Yeah. But it's not, it's this whole stack of stuff. And then when you get a podcaster that says, I'm on a network somewhere and I host somewhere and I'm disappointed with my audience numbers, and I listen to the show and I'm like, man, this is a great show. Well, no one can find him. You know, mom and dad and the friends only take it so far.
Yeah. It's true.
This is work. We're the, the radio stations, they are their own best promoters. And because they've got 24 hours of content to promote the morning show, the evening drive, anything. And they don't want you to turn that dial. We don't have that power here.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to we have to work extra hard.
Yeah. No, that's right.
This is not easy. Anyone, if somebody, some guru out there does figure out the secret formula, man, that guy's going to be rich.
Todd, I wanted to mention, this is maybe a little bit off the topic of podcasting per se, but there appears to be some movement that's happening in the technology sphere right now, and the only reason I say this is because there's a lot of podcast apps out there, and a lot of listening is happening in podcast apps, but there seems to be some bubblings around this concept of progressive web apps. I don't know if you've heard about this, Todd. They're called PWAs, and I've been kind of thinking about this for many years myself as kind of the ultimate destination. So as you back up and you think about how we experience our devices today, they're on the desktop we play around with native apps for our desktop experiences or our PC experiences, right? Maybe it's not a desktop kind of thing; it's a laptop or whatever. And then mobile has kind of moved itself towards apps, right? And we've kind of left the web behind somewhat in this. And I've been thinking for many years that we could see the development of this merging between the internet, the web, and apps. And it appears that the technologists out there are starting to make some progress on this, of trying to make web apps function more like native apps. And so there appears to be some efforts that are going on at Microsoft and at Google. I don't know what the activity is going on at a place like Apple, which has really built their platform on getting people addicted to using apps. But you start thinking about how bifurcated our computing experience is right now between native apps and going to websites. We're bouncing back and forth between experiences on both sides. Wouldn't it be great if we just had one experience on our device, where you go to this, whatever it is, whether it's pulling off of the web or pulling off of an app or something like that, just go to one thing. We're not bouncing between two things. And I thought for years that that's the direction that we could see this going with our next generation operating systems and things like that we kind of merge these things together. Well, there appears to be some momentum around that's starting to develop at the bigger companies right now. I don't know what the adoption curve is going to look like on this. It appears that there's some movement on it from Microsoft's perspective, and Google seems to be working on it as well. Time frame sometime in 2018 that we'll start to see some developments around what's called progressive web apps. So I would expect to start to hear some more about this as we move into the next phase of computing. It could be a 5-year, 10-year time frame here, but I think trying to merge these two worlds together, I think makes a lot of sense to me as well.
Well,
but anyway, I don't know. What's your thought on that, Todd?
Well, if you look at, the app I use religiously now is Slack, and the desktop app and the mobile app are essentially a mirror. They look and feel the same. The user experience is the same. So I think they embody probably what you're talking about here the best. But I don't know if does that expand into, your apps like, Premiere and that type of stuff. I think there'll always be standalone apps that are, there just won't be a bridge between mobile and desktop just because it's too far of a stretch.
Well, you probably wouldn't want to have that kind of capability built into a 5-inch screen on a mobile device either. Or a 6-inch screen. Some of that functionality is going to have a different UI experience, which would need to be built into the operating system more. And I think Microsoft, and to give some credit to them, I mean, obviously I used to work there, so I'm a little biased, but I think Microsoft really kind of plowed the ground somewhat with some of this early on with Windows Phone. And it's one of the reasons that I've really enjoyed Windows Phone is the fact that they've created hubs basically, and this is. I'm not saying this is the model that's coming,
Right.
but I think it's a little glimpse of it, right? Where you're merging data from various platforms into one hub experience. So you're bringing in. So Windows Phone had this area where you could view all your social network connections all in one place. So it would pull in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It would pull everything into one wall that would be visible on your phone. I'm not necessarily saying that that's what's going to happen here. I think we're still going to see the separation between Facebook and Twitter. It's just there'll be one experience on our device.
Right.
There won't be a web version and an app version. There'll be just one experience.
Right.
And I think we would all like that. I would like that. I would like one experience, not have this bouncing back and forth between apps and the web and apps and the web. It's not very efficient.
Well, I expect my mobile apps to be fast and efficient. I expect my desktop apps to be more complex. So there is that line. So only time will tell, I guess.
And as you think about these smart speakers, you start thinking about what's happening with this. One of the challenges I see with these smart speakers is discovery too, and you also have these elements of there's only one experience. So like when you ask for a podcast, typically on the Amazon device, the Echo, you basically there's a default app for that, right? You have to make a special call into that device to pull up a different platform like Spreaker. The default in there is TuneIn.
Right.
So you have this kind of strange movement that's happening right now where you have like one player is going to dominate.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Because it's native. You don't have to load a special skill. Yeah.
Well, I mean, so you have a little bit of this going on too that could create some friction, and I think that's one of the challenges with these smart speakers is that we have there's default experiences in these things, which is going to isolate. Amazon doesn't have a podcast platform that's part of their. It's not a first-party service. They're actually working with other outside providers, but they are making a choice, right?
They did make a choice on that.
This provider is the this is their primary provider of this,
right?
And I wouldn't say that TuneIn is is a great place to be a default choice with the podcast space.
Well, that's a choice Amazon made. They shopped around. They were trying to figure out what they were going to do. We talked to them and said, "Hey, we've got a directory. You can, we'll just license you guys and pull from the API. You guys can feed the beast on your own system." And they chose not to do that.
Yeah.
They could have.
Anyway, so all these things are going to have an impact on podcasting and what the experience is on these platforms. And I still think that this new operating system that I'm talking about will be good for the podcast space. I'm just not sure that what's happening the Alexa. I'm sorry, mine just activated too. Is going to be good for podcasting.
Yeah, Evo Terra wrote a piece that has to be brought up, and he posted over on medium.com. And this is I hear a lot of podcasters right now that are really crying about the podcast iOS app. And Evo basically
why is that?
Well, they don't like how it's working. It's they say right now that it's
supposedly it was a big improvement. I thought it was a big improvement.
Yeah, well, it is kind of buggy. It's got some issues. But here's the start of the piece, and it basically says your hatred of Apple Podcast isn't helping. And oh yeah, and he has a very succinct piece in here about the reality of the podcasting space as it relates to Apple and the podcast iOS app. And so in other words, he's basically telling podcasters, hey, shut up, put up and shut up. You don't want to piss the beast off because this is where, more than 50% of your audience is tuned in, and whether you like it or not. And So this
I mean, if it's constructive feedback, that's one thing. But if it's just
well,
bashing,
there's a lot
Apple,
of bashing that's going on, and it's what he's alluding to as a lot of bashing.
Yeah.
But
he says, where's that coming from? Is that coming? What part of the ecosystem is that coming from? Do you know?
Well,
or is it just random? Is it just random?
It's been pretty random, But a lot of people are, and they're all poo-pooing about the Apple app. Well, we need to tell our audience to start using this other app, and I'm seeing a lot of that, But okay, you're going to cut the, you're going to cut the hand off of the group that feeds you. That's. I don't think I said that metaphor right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
I think that there's been a lot of animosity towards Apple because of their market dominance of the podcasting distribution. And Todd, we've discussed this on the show before, is that there's certain segments of the podcasting community that don't like the power that Apple has.
Yeah.
And would like to take some of that market share away and spread it around so Apple doesn't have so much power in the space.
Well, they don't like the download. The download is evil,
yeah.
They want the download to go away. So
yeah. Well, you just gave away, 60% of your listeners too.
Right.
If you turn off the download.
Yeah.
So, it's called shoot yourself in the foot.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful what you wish for.
Apparently, ABC has something where they're calling for submissions for its $1 million podcast fund. And basically, ABC really wants to hear from podcasters who think they have an idea who could become the next big Australian podcast. So in September...
Oh, that ABC?
Yeah.
Okay. Not the...
So in September, ABC of Australia. And so if you think you can, if you're down under, and you think you've got the talent, they're definitely looking for pitches. I just saw the headline. I jumped on it. Parsec Awards announced their 2017 finalists. Parsec Awards been around a long time. So those are out and available.
Mm-hmm.
So some of this news is at podtopod.com. Some of it's at podcasternews.com. Even Blog Talk Radio got a mention. Blog Talk Radio has Coffee with Kenobi. Who's that?
It's just a show that launched.
So, but anyway, there's stuff's moving. I think we just all need to continue to focus on doing great content, building audience members, and doing those things that grows your show.
That Chris said.
Sure.
I think I'm going to spend some time on my Speaker Live show this week talking about how to market your show. I think it's an important conversation that we all need to have, and we talked about a little bit on this show. But trying to build listeners, it's good for the podcast space that everybody that has a podcast does that well. It can pull more audience into the medium. Which is what we need.
I did a pretty long segment on your podcast, which is over at powerpresspodcast.com, and that will come out on Monday, that talks really about this just fundamental stuff that people are missing. And I think that's the key. That's the key word, fundamentals. Just basic podcast 101 fundamentals that podcasters are using. It's like getting the cart before the horse.
Well, it's a sports analogy that I lived with for many years playing basketball. Is you have to be good with the basic fundamentals, and the fundamentals have to be trained and they have to be repeated in order to be fully understood and fully skilled to perform those.
And the fundamentals are never fun. Anyone that's done a football drill, okay.
Yeah,
there's no fun in fundamentals. It is painful, hard work, and you hate the coach for making you do it. But the fundamentals is what like Rob, I agree. It's a good analogy. Good one. Stealing that. If you don't do the fun,
I mean, I lived by that for 13 years myself, and I played college basketball. I mean, those coaches were like drilling the hell out of me. I mean, we were repeating till you get it right. You know, and I guess that applies to pretty much anything. I think sports is a good teacher of being disciplined and being focused. And if you're not, you get yelled at. You know, I mean, a lot of us don't get yelled at when we don't do something.
Oh, I tell my audience to chew me out. I blew it on 2 episodes ago. The intro, I just decimated it. And I said, well, please feel free to bash me on the intro, you know. But you know, a regular podcaster would have redone the intro. I was live. There was no redoing. You know, I could have cleaned it up and made it sound good for the audio audience that was listening later. But, you know.
Well, it's like what's happening with our show today. I think we're overmodulated and
we get the
basically ode being trashed a little bit, I think.
Yeah, we got I have some dials turned up too high. You were so quiet, I probably turned you up too loud. So
yeah. So I mean, even if you've been podcasting for a long time, you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah,
and that's just part of the game. Technology doesn't always work right.
It doesn't help when you rip your studio apart.
Doesn't always work right. Yeah,
and it doesn't help. I've had the studio ripped apart too. So yeah.
And I've done that too, and it's making changes and improvements. It comes with risks.
Yes.
So
I've got some new cables to go in here too. So I had those hadn't been put in yet. So I guess I'll do that post show as I hang my tail between my legs here in shame for having a overmodulated show. But anyway, the content was good.
Yeah.
You guys hung out for it, right?
But we're here. The show must go on.
Yes, yes, indeed. Well, speaking of end of show, everything is held.
I guess we're at it, aren't we?
Yeah. You know, I've seen a few artifacts in the video today, so I'm going to be looking at that. And I've been watching how this new IP thing works. Best thing is, if it doesn't work, I've got all the old gear to go back the old way too. So that's going to go in reverse, but that's not the goal. The goal is to move forward and push the technology. And I just go over to New Tech and complain to them.
Yeah. Well, definitely let us know what you think of the show, the topics. We definitely want to hear from you. And if you are interested in being a guest on the program, reach out to me. Send me an email, rob@robgreenlee.com. And I'd be happy to talk with you. And Todd, I know that we're always open to lots of criticism and feedback and comments and topics that you might want us to cover on the show too. So
and just another thing too, those of you that helped me out with the social campaign to try to get Hawaiian Telecom to bring a 1 gig line, a 1 gig fiber to my home. I'm expecting a call from the director at Hawaiian Telecom on Monday. So your social pushing is kind of helped a little bit there, and I'm 50-50. He may say we can't do it, but I've also dangled a check saying I will pay to have the fiber blown in down. And I know where the fiber is. It's 4 blocks away. So I don't know what it's going to cost to get fiber run from 4 blocks, but they do have conduit they can push it through. It's just a matter of getting them to do that and how many thousands of dollars that's going to cost. But today we did run 3 streams today. So, and one was on your stream, Rob. So I'm confident that we might be able to really do some incredible stuff if we get a 1 gig connection in here with 100 megs up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Time will tell.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic if you can get that kind of speed. One thing I did want to mention before we go is that Twitter upgraded to 280 characters.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just enough. It's perfect. They
should have done that years ago.
It's just like, and I'm not using 280. I'm using it's just enough. I agree wholeheartedly. It was a perfect. Matter of fact, I was complaining to Hootsuite. When are you going to update so I can have 280 characters? So I don't know why they were caught flat-footed and didn't have that ready to go. But yeah, 280, awesome.
Yeah.
So
actually, it's going to save a lot of time in creating content over there because, I don't know about you, but I had to write something and then I had to rewrite it to shorten it,
Yep.
rewrite it again to shorten it more.
Yep.
Or now you just write it the way you would normally write something.
Yep. And I can put about an extra 30, 40 characters, and it's just enough to get where I don't have to be aggravated. Now, some people are saying, well, what 140 characters has really done to us is made us more stupid. So, and the longer length, and it's true. It's it's been known that these shorter messages, this texting, it all has led to shorter memory retention. So we may be able to get memory retention up by having a little longer post.
Yeah.
It might be an ancillary benefit of it, but yeah, I'm jazzed about it totally. Well, we're out of time here, so
over. Yep.
Yeah, we're actually an hour 30. We started a little late, but folks, if you have any comments on today's show, you can email me anytime for anything really. Todd@blueberry.com. Follow me on Twitter @Geek News. Rob?
I can be reached rob@robgreenlee.com, and I'm on Twitter as well @robgreenlee. Those are the best places to reach me. And then I do the Spreaker Live Show every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern at SpreakerLiveShow.com.
And everyone, thanks for hanging out with us today, and we'll work on the scratchy audio and get that dialed in so it's not scratchy next week. So everyone, thanks. We'll see you next time here on the New Media Show. Everyone, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.